I was probably one of the only people out there talking bearishly on Bitcoin at those highs. And a part of it was, you start to recognize, even as a stock trader, when people get overly like, and this happened with GameStop and AMC as well.
So Bitcoin has been trading sideways, and I'm sure you're worried about where we're going from here. When things were going great for it, there were very few people who said that we'll see a bear market very soon. Gareth Soloway was one of those very few. In this interview, he talks about his new predictions for Bitcoin on the basis of some data and new catalysts. Before we look at it, I'd just like to remind you to like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. This motivates us to create new videos for you every single day. Now let's look at his interview.
So I still remember I was in Dubai at a blockchain conference, and this was last October, and Bitcoin was like just around 65,000. And I basically said, I don't believe this is a breakout. I don't think this is happening. I think it's going to head to 20,000. You should have heard the social media uproar over it. I was the devil. I was totally stupid. I was everything, right? But ultimately, the charts are telling me these things, and I just know how to read them relatively well. And sure enough, since then we've come down. I think just a couple nights ago we tested 25,000, so we haven't quite got to the target yet. But the bottom line is, it's going to go there. For those of you that I know, a lot of you guys are stock traders. If you're an older stock trader and you traded through the .com bubble, this is .com 2.0, right? It's the hype. People in the .com era, it was all about, this technology is going to change the world. The internet's changing the world. And they were right. The problem is, things just don't go linearly like that. So it wasn't like, oh, you're just going to go up in the .coms forever. So there had to be a washout there. They say the same thing about blockchain technology, Bitcoin. I agree with them long term. It is game changing, but you still can't have all these crap coins out there, these meme coins that are made as jokes getting $50 billion valuations. I mean, honestly, it's ridiculous. And so you need to see a flush out. And I always remind people that in the .com era, Amazon was around. It was $112 stock. It went to $6 in the washout. So what is that? 90% down, over 90%. And now it went from $6 in 2000-ish all the way up to a high a year ago of like 3,800. So think about that potential return. You just have to go through this washout. It's very Darwinian like that, where the strongest will survive, and that's healthy for the market. The NFT bubble was a standard kind of extension of the crypto bubble that we've seen, and you're already seeing it starting to collapse. Like, I mean, the one thing that keeps me away from buying and selling NFTs is that it's such an illiquid market that you could buy in fact, I think there was a story where the person that bought Jack Dorsey's first Twitter tweet as an NFT, he like bought it, I don't know, like $1 million, and then he was trying to sell it and he couldn't sell it. He couldn't find a buyer for it, even for like 100,000 or even like $50,000. So I mean, there's no doubt that these things are bubbles, and I think it's just that it's got to be washed out. And I do hope that, I think there is a place for, I mean, if you're someone like me that's concerned about the government printing like endless amounts of money and diluting, you do want something like Bitcoin as the digital gold, where it's kind of like a safety place to go, but it's just not at that point yet. This market is way too young, way too volatile. But I hope it does get there eventually. I was probably one of the only people out there talking bearishly on Bitcoin at those highs. And a part of it was, you start to recognize, even as a stock trader, when people get overly like, and this happened with GameStop and AMC as well, where when the crowds get so kind of enamored and so overhyped for it, that I've seen so many of these bubbles burst, and just this is the exact replay of what's going on. And then so number one, you get kind of that sentiment indicator, which is way too much like hype and way too much craziness on this. And once people start throwing out crazy targets like, oh, Bitcoin will be at 1 million by year end, you just start to say, all right, this is way too out of control. And then you go to the chart and you're saying, okay, well, let me look at it just from a purely technical standpoint. And you start to realize that the hype is more than when Bitcoin was at 65,000 in March of 2021, and now we're in October, November, and the price is basically at what we would refer to as a double top. So now as a technician, double tops are powerful resistance points. You start to watch really closely, and what I could see is every time we would take out that 65,000 by like a day, we would close above it, sellers would come back in and pound it back down. And you say to yourself, okay, well, if all the small investors, if the whole world is bullish, then why isn't it breaking out? And then you start to realize, all right, well, there must be big money unloading it here, right? So they're not allowing it. They're using this hype to sell into. Otherwise, the price would be, surging higher through this 65,000 level. So, I mean, there were a lot of signals like that that kind of got my attention. Being stock traders like you guys are, another thing that's really freaky is to look at the Amazon chart in the .com era, and the chart is exactly identical to Bitcoin's chart right now, which tells me there's more downside on Bitcoin, that it's not done yet. So yeah, it's just so weird to, you kind of mirror the .coms. Some other cool stuff too. There was the Super Bowl in 2000, and there were so many .com commercials. It was dubbed the .com Super Bowl. Well, this latest Super Bowl had a bunch of crypto commercials, right? So like there's so many similarities, that you just have to say, okay, the chart from Amazon looks identical. This is going on. And so to me, it's just like, all right, it's telling us, it's just a matter of, do we want to believe it in the crypto markets? And a lot of people don't. They're still in denial, but price is truth, as you know. Solana is definitely kind of second tier, but it's an amazing one. The speed at which, it's had a lot of problems, but for me, it's like, you have to be really careful with something like Solana. When I'm diversifying in my crypto portfolio, I'll put the most money into Bitcoin in my portfolio because it's the most stable. It's the one that's most accepted by big money, essentially. These second tier ones like Solana, Avalanche, and other ones, they have a great technology, but you don't know if there'll be another coin that emerges that has better technology. And that's always my kind of fear with these ones that have use case. So Bitcoin really has no use case except for a store of safety. I actually like that. A lot of people kind of say, oh, that's not good, but it's not trying to be anything else. It's just the store of safety. It's the digital gold. That's fine. The other ones are all competing for, speed, which one's faster in terms of transactions, which one's cheaper. And that's where you kind of can get into some situations. So it's not to not invest in them a little bit, but just understand that you need to diversify amongst a greater number because you don't know which one will be the ultimate winner. I'm definitely more the type where for shorter term trading, I'm just like, all right, well, what's the level? Like if I'm going to do a day trade or a quick swing trade, it's all technicals, right? But when I'm thinking about, okay, well, where am I going to position some of my wealth? Is it going to be in gold? Is it going to be in crypto? Is it going to, where am I going to spread it out? Then that's where you have to, you can't keep your head in the sand and not see longer term trends emerging that maybe aren't showing up in the charts just yet. And what's interesting is that if you look at when crypto really started to do this last run, it was like late 2020, 2021, and then topping out later. And so it's almost the same kind of like 2-year-ish window where you got this big push up. But yeah, it's the .coms, it was kind of the same thing, right? You had these .coms initially kind of getting pops, but the real craziness started right at the end of the cycle, which is so reminiscent of what we've seen in crypto here. I think for the most part, on cryptocurrencies, the biggest thing is the risk on, risk off factor. So again, you can basically track the Bitcoin chart with the NASDAQ at this point, where when you have a big down day in the NASDAQ, people sell crypto as well because it's risk off, right? Everyone's trying to protect themselves. And as much as Bitcoin wants to be a digital gold and be a safety area, it's not. You were mentioning how old things are and how new the market in crypto is. And basically, Bitcoin was created in 2009. It's the equivalent of a 13-year-old, right? So I always like to say to people, like how erratic is a 13-year-old? Very erratic, right? Versus a mature adult or grandparent that's very measured. Like gold would be kind of the grandparent, while you have like the 13-year-old is Bitcoin. And so you see how crazy Bitcoin acts because it just hasn't matured yet as an asset. So I think as a macro, there's lots of positives out there, like El Salvador adopting it, and even Facebook just I think a day or two ago started to get involved in Bitcoin a little bit as well. But fear and greed rule everything. And right now you have a fearful market of the Fed hiking. And that's the biggest macro play is what is the Fed going to do? How hawkish is the Fed going to be? And that will then shape where Bitcoin goes. And my guess is the Fed is going to have to raise rates multiple times more, which will then push Bitcoin down to the final flush out.